Good evening. I'd like to call the May 12th, 2022 Addison Township Zoning Boards of Appeal to order. And we'd start with the Pledge of Allegiance. All stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everybody. We have a roll call.
Tony Spina.
Here.
Ed Brakefield.
Here.
Vice Chair Smith.
Here.
Chair DeWitt.
Here.
Jay Sandler.
Here.
Bill Marshall.
Here.
Next item on the agenda would be approval of the agenda itself. Do you have a motion to approve?
I'll second.
We can have a roll call vote, please.
Tony Spina.
Yes.
Ed Brakefield.
Yes.
Jay Sandler.
Yes.
Vice Chair Smith.
Yes.
Chair DeWitt.
Yes. Next item on the agenda would be approval of the April 14th, 2022 minutes. If you have a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? Changes? Okay. Hearing none, if we could have a roll call vote on the...
Ed Brakefield.
Yes.
Tony Spina.
Yes.
Jay Sandler.
Yes.
Vice Chair Smith.
Yes.
Chair DeWitt.
Yes. Okay, the first case on the agenda tonight is case 22-4. The applicant is Dr. Surendra and Jayashri Kalawa. And the applicant's parcel address is 679 Gravel Ridge. Applicant's parcel ID is 05.22.301.001, and the zoning is suburban farms. This evening is our public hearing on that case. We won't make any decisions on the case tonight. We're just going to have input from the audience and the applicant. And the applicant seeks a variance of the Township of Addison Code of Ordinances, Appendix A, Code of Ordinances, Article 13, Lake Lot District Overlay, Section 13.03.3. The applicant is requesting a 35-foot variance from the 50-foot setback. The system is proposed 15 feet from the lake on the north side and a 34-foot variance. The system is proposed at 16 feet from the lake on the south side for placement of an on-site sewage disposal system. Code section 13.03.3, septic systems shall be located, or states that a septic system shall be located at a minimum of 100 feet from the lake and shall be designed so as to drain away from the lake and its watersheds and its tributaries and any wells. The 100 feet setback may be reduced to not less than 50 feet, provided that an applicant submits to the township an approved on-site wastewater treatment system permit issued by the Oakland County Health Division or any replacement entity. And the applicant seeks appeals of administrative decisions from the building official decision. I would ask that the applicant confirm that is what they're asking for.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's nice to see you all again. I'm Mike Legal, together with Jeff Lee. We represent the callers. This is Mike Powell, who's an engineer, who will talk to you about the septic system in a few moments, but he definitely correctly indicated that, Mr. DeWitt.
Okay, so that is the application.
Yeah.
Okay. At this point, we're asking, we'd like to go into a public hearing portion of the meeting. And I'd like to have a motion to open the public hearing.
I'll make that motion to open the public hearing at, what is it, 6:04?
Yeah. 6:05.
6:05?
Okay. Support?
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a roll call.
Tony Spina.
Yes.
Ed Brakefield.
Yes?
Jay Sandler.
Yes.
Vice Chair Smith.
Yes.
Chair DeWitt.
Yes. Okay. Again, this is the time for the public hearing. If anybody in the public has any comments with respect to this application for the septic system, now's their time to speak to the board. And is there anybody who wants to make a comment about this case?
Sure, I will. Scott Devereaux, 413 Hamlet.
I really don't have a lot of background on the technical details. I think we'll hear some more about that. But it appears this does create an interesting thing for small lots on the lake based on the details of Article 13, as septics are something that don't last forever typically, and creates an interesting question. If you've got an old septic, especially on a smaller lot on the lake that boxes you into these tight areas from the water, it's time for a septic to be redone. You're looking at the latest technology available today versus what was available at the time of the septic being put in, which I guess is quite a few decades back. And then if you stick to your guns on setbacks, you tell everyone on the lake that might have a future situation like that, you got no more occupancy permit because they need a new septic, and you can't fit the new one that would pass all the latest county requirements, but might not meet what was in the Article 13. The other point I would make is just for all of us to keep in mind, pay close attention to the grandfathering point. We do know that the Davis Law Firm has a history of not quite getting that right at the courthouse, and we've spoken about that previously. Whether that applies here exactly or not, I'm not sure. Thank you.
Anybody else in the audience want to make a comment about the application tonight? So, anybody else? Last chance. We'll be closing the public hearing if nobody steps forward. No one coming forward then? I'd like to have a motion to close the public hearing at 6:07.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, roll call vote to close the public hearing.
Tony Spina?
Yes.
Jay Sandler?
Yes.
Ed Brickfield?
Yes.
Vice Chair Smith?
Yes.
Chair DeWitt?
Yes. Okay. Now is the time for the applicant to present their case. And this isn't a chance for them to interact with the audience at this point. You just make your case.
Well, I'm going to be quite brief because there's actually an expert on septic systems here, Mr. Powell, our engineer. He'll provide the details. But I just want to make a few comments. You know, as you know, that we concern ourselves with practical difficulties and self-created circumstances. Definitely, we have no self-created circumstances, and we have huge practical difficulties. But what Mr. Devereaux said is very, very important and correct. There has just been a blossoming in technology since the ordinances were drafted. And because of that, I think that it's good news for everybody on the lake who would have one of the newer septic systems eventually. But as to the details, we know that the building official made his call in accordance with the ordinances, and we're not arguing with that at all. He's doing his job. But we do believe that because, as you know, there's a consent judgment from earlier activity on this very issue, the Oakland County Health Department has, as a result, issued a permit that is currently valid. So I will turn it over to Mr. Powell unless somebody wants to ask me any questions, and he can explain the details and why it's a good idea. Okay. Thanks.
Do you have any questions right now?
What is the attorney's name again? Could you spell it?
Please say your name.
Mike Lebo, L-E-B-O-W.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Oh, Mr. Powell?
Yes. Mr. Chairman, would it be better to set up over there so the audience can see it better, or do you like it here?
I think right there is fine.
Okay, thank you. Let me introduce myself first. I've been before the Addison Township Planning Commission and Township Board a couple times. I am also a trustee in White Lake Township, and then I did something fairly questionable. When the supervisor asked me if I would serve on the ZBA of White Lake Township, I said yes. And quite frankly, this board is the hardest board in the township. I'd rather serve on the township board than the ZBA any day. So I know exactly what you guys put up with. I've been designing engineered septic systems for over 40 years now. I am a municipal engineer as well, so I represent communities and review developers' projects as they come into the communities. I've represented half dozen in Oakland County, and I currently represent the village of Wolverine Lake, which is a lake community with septic systems, and we're just trying to get sanitary sewers installed around the lake to protect the lakes from septic systems. That being said, I have been very diligently trying to stay on top of all the technology that has been developed over the years to clean the sanitary waste from residential structures as clean as we can possibly get them. The township requirement of 200 feet with a minimum of 100 feet is not unusual in Oakland County. There are a number of communities that I've represented that actually have even more than what you have in your ordinance. But all the communities, including the ones I represent, have found that the older homes, the homes that were built 40, 50, 60, 70 years ago, were all built using the old technique of a septic field, which is the sewage comes from the home, goes into a septic tank, flows from the septic tank out into a septic field, and the ground then absorbs that water and it dissipates in the ground. Where the problem develops is when you're in a marginal area or an environmentally sensitive area. Now you have a problem. You want to try to prevent that sewage even going through the ground to get to a wetland or a lake. And so historically, what's had to happen is the health department has had to renew septic systems using the old technology, because it wasn't until the early 2000s that the new technology started taking off. So we now have septic systems that are failing now, that have been in place for 20, 30, 40 years, that really are going to be coming, they're going to be failing. And as the gentleman in the back represented, this township, as well as ones I represent, and my township in White Lake, we have to deal with that somehow. And the best technique now is to extend sanitary sewers. If they're not available, now we have to go to a technique to clean that water coming from the house as best as we can, because the health department and the courts have identified that if a septic field's not issued, that condemns the home and the people don't have any place to go. And in the 40 years that I've been doing this, I've never had a home condemned by a court, because they realized they'd be putting a family out of a home, and so therefore it is remanded back to the health department. In this particular case, it's very similar. We have an older home with a septic field that had failed, and I was asked to design a septic system the very best I could, and it was, I used the most modern technique, and I'll tell you about this in a little bit. And when I sat down with the health department, we sit down and mediate the different designs, and I have 5 or 6 different engineered septic systems that I designed, pre-treated. The health department and I did our very best to come up with the most modern, state-of-the-art system that we could possibly come up with available today. And that's what I'd like to present to you today as well. So the system that I have presented to the health department, this design was, or the technology was first adopted in 2022. It's called an Advantex System. It was presented to the National Sanitation Foundation in Ann Arbor.
Sorry to interrupt you, but you said 2022?
I'm sorry. I apologize. Thank you. 2002. So it's been around about 20 years now. And so once it was developed, it was presented to the state. The state remanded it to the sanitation, NSF, the National Sanitation Foundation. They put it through a rigorous test. Those testing results, and that's a nonprofit organization, by the way, those test results are given over to the state health department. The state health department reviews all of those and then makes their judgment as to whether to accept that particular treatment system as an acceptable treatment process in Michigan. Then it leaves it up to the local health departments whether or not to adopt that into their approved sanitary code. And that's exactly what's happened in this particular case, except for one little change that I'll present to you as I go through it. But this system has been approved by the state, and then adopted and approved by Oakland County as an acceptable pre-treatment system. Now, I do want to make a statement that even though my profession, I design sanitary sewers and septic systems, I would always promote, and I try always to promote, tying into a sanitary sewer. That is always the best. And in Wayne Township, we're trying to extend sanitary sewers, even despite the fact that I'm putting myself out of work, which is just fine, because I would much rather have sanitary sewers in my community than septic fields. But that being said, this particular system is designed to pick up the sanitary sewer from the home, the wastewater from the home, and run it through a step process for treatment. I'm going to be describing something that if you were at all technical, you'd know that the Oakland County and the City of Pontiac, City of Detroit, a municipal wastewater treatment plant operates the same way. The difference is it took until 2002 in order for the private sector to take a large treatment plant that serves the sewage from cities and package it down into a plant about the size of a septic tank, a little bigger than a septic tank. And it takes it through the process where the wastewater comes into the treatment plant. It circulates in that treatment plant where air is added to it, and it allows bacteria then to work on that sewage, and it flows into another tank, and then it comes back into the recirculation tank. So it's a recirculation system to where it finally gets as clean as it possibly can, drops into a clarifying tank, and then my design pumps it out into a septic field. So this treatment process does not magically make water disappear. We can't do that. The other thing I can't represent, although the salespeople for the treatment plant think it's a nice catchy phrase, they say they can almost drink their water. But I would never do that, and I would never recommend anybody do that. But it treats the sewage to almost rainwater quality. To give you just a couple statistics, a normal septic tank treats the sewage to a BOD, or biological oxygen demand, of 350 milligrams per liter. That's just a number that doesn't mean much to you, but it's a number that identifies the strength of the sewage coming out of a single-family home. This treatment plant, the RX-20 Advantex, reduces that BOD level to 5 to 10 milligrams per liter. So it drops it from 350 to 5 to 10. The other telltale that Oakland County uses to identify the quality of the treatment system is nitrogen. Nitrogen is detrimental to a lake, body of water, wetlands. It's virtually fertilizer, as you well know. A normal septic tank treats the sewage to a 50 50 milligrams per liter, or 50 parts per million, I'm sorry, of nitrogen. This particular plant drops that nitrogen level to 2 to 5 parts per million. Drops it all the way down that low. So we're really talking about something very, very close to approaching rainwater quality. Now that's really critical because, in my opinion, every septic tank in Oakland County should be eliminated on every permit issued, and they ought to require a treatment plant for every septic tank permit that's issued, every new permit that's issued. Unfortunately, that's unrealistic price-wise, because you're talking about replacing an $800 septic tank with an $8,000 to $15,000 treatment plant. So a residential home, and that's not including the cost of the septic field or anything, that's just the treatment plant itself. So unless there is a environmental reason to go with a pre-treatment system, then Oakland County has agreed to allow for septic tanks, normal septic systems, to still propagate in areas where there's not an environmental issue. We're talking about an environmental issue here, and quite frankly, addressing someone back there, every lake house, that water eventually gets to the lake. And so the septic systems themselves, that water can be cleaner than what it is currently. So I'm going to be representing to you, as I describe this system, that this system is going to be better qualified or cleaner than any septic system that I'm aware of on the lake at all. So this is state of the art. When Oakland County and I sat down, we designed this system. We slighted on this system because it's got the best quality treatment possible. We actually incorporated a brand new technology that is associated with these smaller plants, and it is UV light. So not only are we treating the sewage coming from the home, but this system has a UV light attached to it, to where all the water that's leaving this plant is run through a ultraviolet light that kills bacteria and viruses. So we're not only cleaning it, we're now destroying the viruses and bacteria that could be followed in the wastewater. And I think you probably have heard Macomb County's drain commissioner stating that they're actually finding COVID virus in the sanitary sewer systems that they treat or that they carry. We've gone above and beyond there on this. So this UV light will kill viruses and bacteria. So, if I can, are there any questions on the boring technical stuff that I've thrown to you so far? All right.
Well, I guess the only thing,
Yes.
maybe you're not aware, but there have been a number of Advantex systems used to replace failed systems on this lake, on small properties where the properties did not meet the township requirements, but were approved by the ZBA.
All right,
So
fantastic.
this is not totally new to us.
I appreciate that very much. I don't know if those have the UV light on it,
But not to my recollection.
okay. But thank you for sharing that with me. And quite frankly, if I was your engineer, I would be looking to give you advice that should be almost standard in the township, even if the Oakland County didn't require it. So,
I have a question.
Yeah.
absolutely.
We talked about a system similar to this for another property 6 or 7 months ago, I believe. And as I recall, one of the maybe downsides of this system is it requires quite a bit of maintenance. And so the question is, what kind of maintenance is this system going to require, and what's the complications of it being kind of inaccessible on an island where Mr. Maintenance guy, you just can't pull up in his van and go, yep, I checked it. How's that all going to work? And
What an excellent question, and I can address that now or as part of the deed restriction requirements of the county. So,
I'd like to hear it now.
okay, very good. On all the engineered septic systems, and especially the pretreatment systems, it's a requirement of the county that, and it's deed restricted, so this is enforceable by law. The owners must have in place and enforced a 24/7 contract with a licensed operator for this plant. As a matter of fact, there is a new requirement of the county that you must have an operator's permit and renewed annually so that they can control who is in fact maintaining this system. So you have an enforceable contract with an approved, certified contractor that is certified not only by the county, but by the manufacturer of the system. And that's not just for Advantex, that's for Norweco and all of the pretreatment systems. The unique thing that the county does is that this system, well, let me back up. The contract requires that no less than twice a year, every 6 months, that contractor must come out, verify the system's operating properly, do all the testing, measurement, call for any service that's necessary, and then there's a website that he has to enter all of his data and all of his observations on that is directly linked to the county. So they can see exactly when all the service is done, what service was done, and they can verify that it's being kept up. Probably even more important than that, there is a requirement there be an automatic calling system on this system and the new pretreatment systems. Used to be that we could just tie into the AT&T or Bell telephone service. Very few homes have that anymore. So their boxes are tied to the internet or to cellular service, and if the control panel receives any negative or any problems that is received from the system itself, it automatically dials to this contractor, and that contractor then comes out, since he already has an enforceable contract, he comes out, repairs it, so the owners don't even have the ability to call. Now, along with that, there's a really irritating buzzer that goes off on the outside as well, so the owners know that something's wrong. But the contractor's automatically called. So that's above and beyond what we had just a number of years ago, since people don't have telephone service much anymore. Does that answer your question?
Well, the contractor that would, is a contractor that's going to be proposed contractor to do the maintenance. Do they have a boat to get out to the, this is a unique location, so.
You're excellent point. The owners certainly have a boat, and I could say that they'd have to coordinate bringing the contractor over. If they're out of town, certainly this contractor is not going to be able to get there unless he brings his own kayak or whatever. And quite frankly, I have not asked American Concrete, who is the licensed operator for these things, whether or not they would bring a boat out here. If the owners are not home, then of course they're not using water, so the urgency isn't there. But there better be a call made from the contractor to the owners and vice versa to coordinate him getting out. I wish I could say that they're going to have a boat tied up on shore. I don't know the answer to that. I think that's a great question maybe to ask the attorneys and the owners, and you as a board may need to deal with that. So I appreciate the question.
Mike, as a follow-up with Jay's, you did great explaining it to who's going to take care of the maintenance. However, obviously, it can break down. Could you explain to us what is the worst-case scenario if it crashes and the homeowners are not there?
All right. If it crashes and the homeowners are not there, obviously sanitary sewage is not going into the plant, so they're not using water in their home. So there is no immediate urgency take care of that.
Let's say the homeowners are there then. Let's give us the worst case.
Okay, worst case scenario, there's like a 3-day storage volume inside that plant. The contractor has to get there within 3 days if they're utilizing the water as normal in their home. My requirements in this design are that no water softener water can go into it, no garbage disposal water can go into it, certainly no rainwater obviously can go into it. So worst case scenario is the system would end up flowing through into the absorption bed, the septic field, if in fact the contractor hasn't come out and repaired it. The longer it runs like that, the more it becomes more like a septic tank. And that's not what we want. That destroys. Septic tanks operate on a different type bacteria than treatment plants do. Treatment plants, the bacteria that thrives in oxygen live in treatment plants. Bacteria that thrives on no oxygen live in septic tanks, anaerobic versus aerobic decomposition. So the longer it's not repaired, the more septic the sewage goes in the plant, and that would be detrimental. The owners then would have a major cost to not rebuild everything, but the medium inside that treatment plant would have to be replaced if it got bogged up with lack of maintenance.
Thank you.
I have a question. Does the tank ever have to be pumped at all? Like the typical system, you're pumping the tank occasionally. What would happen here if it has to be pumped?
Excellent question. In this particular case, eventually they do have to be pumped because eventually the material from the house, there's a certain portion of that doesn't break down, especially if they end up with some bones in it or things like that. This particular system recirculates, as I said before, the sewage from just before it goes out of this system back to the tank itself, so it constantly is breaking down what normally is settled on the ground, settled at the bottom, and you can, I think you've probably heard in a septic tank, you've got sludge that settles to the ground and you've got scum on the surface. This plant treats both of those things. But eventually, there will be a buildup at the bottom that slowly rises up to the point to where it needs to be pumped out. It will have to be pumped out occasionally, and that would have to be done by hand in a sludge pump and then carried off the site in cans or barrels. We're talking about every between 5 and 10 years is when the expected pumping would normally have to take place.
The people who would be doing this, would they be licensed, insured, and all that stuff to protect the lake, or how's that going to work?
I don't know the legalities of that, but certainly they're licensed and insured haulers, and they must meet certain criteria to even haul and pump that material. So they're licensed by the county and the state to do that. I don't know the answer to that.
Let me ask you, is the water coming out of that system cleaner than what the lake water is?
Great question, and I gave you those numbers because I have not taken a sample of the lake water to determine where that is in the spectrum of the test that I just quoted to you. My best guess is because the county actually tests beaches on public lakes, and they actually shut them down if in fact the E. coli or the BOD is too high. I would make a statement that I believe this system treats the water as clean or cleaner than the lake, but there's a safety valve in there that I can then unequivocally say that the answer to that's yes. Because not only do you have the treatment plant, but now you're taking that polished water and treated water and you're perking it down through 4 feet of sand, which polishes it even greater. And so that's from the septic field down through the sand. And then, once it gets down through that 4 feet of sand, then it goes horizontally, and it's still got 23 plus feet of going through the soil before it gets to the lake. So it is certainly much cleaner than the runoff from lawns that have just had their lawns fertilized, or the homeowners fertilize their lawn. So yes, so we've got safety factors on all that.
Now, one last question. You made a statement that you wouldn't drink the water. Besides the fact that it sounds kind of gross to begin with, why wouldn't you drink it?
Well, first of all, your drinking water has a much higher quality, and I can state this, that I was fortunate enough that I just got back from my grandkids in Cancun, and I was told that I didn't even drink their water. So this has more bacteria in it than Cancun's water does, and so therefore you certainly wouldn't be hurt by drinking it, but the next couple of weeks would be very uncomfortable for you if you drank that water, because you still have the bacteria in there that would interfere with your system. That is the bacteria side of it. The other side of it is you still are not treating the household cleaners. So if you have, if you're cleaning counters off, or you're cleaning the toilets out, that has just been diluted, but it hasn't been eliminated. So that gets eliminated in the bacteria in the soil, but it doesn't get eliminated in the treatment process.
The other question I have is about the installation of the tank. How's that going to impact the lake?
All right. Very good question, and a very tough issue to resolve. When I designed this system, the health department and I recognized that that was going to be a problem. So we designed this with plastic tanks. So it's the high-density polyethylene tanks, certainly watertight tanks, and it's much lighter than a concrete tank. So the contractor can in fact lift it up with their backhoe and load it on, I'm just going to say something, just for the sake of this discussion, and get it over to the site to be able to be installed. That something, however, was very, very important, because I know probably 20 installers, and I gave all their names to the koalas, and for some reason the contractors didn't have a big enough boat to be able to do that. They finally found a contractor, K&K Excavating, a very ingenious contractor with big equipment. He found a large barge that he's going to float his equipment over, as well as the materials, to be able to build this site, and then of course leave again. So he has a barge that's going to take him between the mainland and the island in order to build the system.
Any idea where they're going to launch this barge from?
Boy, oh boy, that's over my head. I believe the contractor was all set. There was a delay in actually finding the material, not the material, but the treatment plant itself. He was all set with the barge last fall. And he called and said, Mike, the supplier can't provide us with the treatment plant. Can't find it anywhere. And so I quickly got on the phone and called all over the country and finally found one to be delivered. But that has now been just left in the contractor's yard. But I do not know where he intended on parking and loading the barge. I do not know that. There are some things that I don't control, and so that's one of them.
Oh, it's in the Salvation Army with Matt Buckley, the director of Salvation Army. He's allowing us to bring the barge to their shore. They have a very large shore.
Okay.
And it's all been agreed with them that they will let us do it, to load the barge from there and bring all the equipment across.
My one last final question, sorry to monopolize this. This is a raised bed system, and how high is the bed?
It is, and that's a great opening for me to get into the actual design of the site. If you let me, I'll answer that in the rest of the presentation.
Sure.
All right. So this is a copy of the actual plan that the county and I mutually agreed to. It shows the plan itself, showing the piping leaving the building, going through the treatment plant to a pump chamber and out to the septic field. I've got the details and all the construction notes on this plan. So this is the plan that both the health department and I agreed on, and that the court approved, and that the permit was issued on. So this meets with all the health department's requirements based upon their and my discussion. It's kind of a unique process when I go through that as well, because I sit down with the staff of the health department and we say, okay, we know that we have to come to some agreement here, and what's the best way we can do that? And we go through every concept we possibly can. And that's how we came to the conclusion of what I'm going to share with you now on this particular design. A little bit bigger view of the site itself without all those extraneous details around it. The house has an existing pipe coming out of the house that used to run into the existing septic tank and out into the existing field. So this site operated for years and years and years, way before I was around, with a normal septic tank, septic field, and the water went out into that field, went horizontally through the soil, and this septic field, this old septic field, is down into the existing grade, and that water eventually made its way out to the lake, just normal septic tank water. Now, I say it has been treated by the distance between whatever distance from the edge of that field to the lake, but that water made it out into the lake. Our design, we pick up the same pipe, it runs into the treatment system, it's a two-tank treatment system, and it clarifies in this first tank, runs over, is treated with air in the second tank, it's recirculated back to this first tank to where it meets certain criteria, and as the water is treated and they use more water, it forces the relatively clean water into a pump chamber at the north end of their system, and it forces the water out into a very long and narrow treatment or a septic field, and it's raised up to be 4 feet above the groundwater that was found. As you probably can surmise, the groundwater around a lake is virtually the lake level. So the lake is just an exposed area of the groundwater. So this system, and not the finished grade, but the stone itself has to be 4 feet above the known groundwater there. And then it's covered with topsoil so it can be seeded and mulched. So this pump chamber feeds into this long, narrow septic system, and in the past, and you can probably think about this in a normal septic system, the water leaving the septic tank flows into the first part of a septic field by gravity, and then it goes through the holes in that septic pipe and outlets into the ground, the first holes it sees. So what happens is those first holes accept most of the water, and eventually the stone underneath those first holes fail, and then the water can work its way further and further down the end of the septic field. And so that's how the first septic system was designed, and that's one of the reasons it failed. A more modern technique is this pump chamber flows through a 2-inch pipe, and then these laterals are only 1 inch in size. So they're pressure dosed. So remember, it's relatively clean water. You don't have any solids in it, so it's just relatively clean water. And it forces its way in this entire system, energizing, pressurizing that whole system. And every 4 feet, there's a 3/16" hole where the water squirts out. It's almost like a drip system for your shrubbery. You just have the little holes that are feeding that shrub. That's how this happens. So what happens is, when that pump turns on, it energizes, pressurizes this whole field, and the whole field now gets saturated at once and works as a unified or a single entity, instead of starting here and then slowly letting the water come back. That is that accomplishes two things. Number one, greatly increases the life expectancy of the septic field. Not only are you putting clean water in it, but you're saturating the field, or you're energizing, you're dosing the whole field at once. The other thing you do is it allows for the water to be uniformly placed over this whole area, so the entire area all the way around this field is accepting that water, instead of it being concentrated in one location. So we are not only cleaning it, we're distributing it in the most efficient way possible, and then we are allowing it to flow horizontally. Will the water eventually get to the lake? Absolutely. We'd be kidding ourselves if we didn't. So the concept here is make that water just as clean as you can possibly make it, and I believe, and the health department believes, that's what we've done here. Made it as clean as we possibly can. Now, 2 points. You can see I made this very long and narrow because it kind of mimics the shape of the island. The closest point this septic field is 23 feet on both sides. So I've centered this long, narrow field in the center of this relatively narrow island, 23 feet off of the water's edge. The reason why the request is for 15 feet or 16 feet, because the system really includes the tankage as well. So these watertight plastic tanks are in fact closer than that 23-foot dimension that I just told you about. This system, this tank here, which is the pump chamber, again, I have to certify that all these tanks are watertight, is 15 feet off the water's edge. No water can escape out of that. So technically, though, it's only 15 feet off the water's edge. The southern end of that, the treatment plant itself, again, is watertight, but it's 16 feet off the water's edge. So technically, that's the closest point. But really, where the water enters the ground is 23 feet. That is the closest point anywhere around the septic field. At the end of the island, I'm 40 feet off of the septic field. So the other advantage of this type system is that you can clean, and part of the maintenance of the system is that you can clean these lines, whereas in a normal septic system you can't. You've got 4-inch pipe buried 1 or 2 feet down in the ground. Who knows if they're plugged? You don't know until you can't flush the toilet. In this particular case, the contractor that comes out and maintains these is responsible to come out and open some valves that are on the end of this system. And there's a small valve on the end where you turn it. It's got a cap on it, and you take the cap off and you turn that valve, and when this pump kicks on, you've now cleaned out that entire line to where you have now maintenance of each one of those lines. So you virtually have a built-in cleaning process, whereas in a normal septic field you do not. I believe I've hit all the key points that I wanted to bring out tonight. Again, I've done my very, very best, brought in all my skills I possibly could. This is, as you point out, an extremely unique situation. Most of the time I'm adjacent to a wetland, or the old timers used to put the septic fields on lake sides of homes, because they know they rarely fail because it's going to flow to the lake. Well, that's exactly opposite of what you should do. In a modern septic system, they're always roadside, so that you have the furthest distance from the lake you possibly can. So what happens is now to replace those, normally you have the well of your well and all your neighbors' wells roadside and the septic system's lakeside. So it's very trying sometimes and very frustrating to replace septic systems lakeside because you can't put a septic system adjacent to a well. So unfortunately, septic systems have to be lakeside occasionally if you can't put them roadside to replace them. I do want to let the ZBA know that the health department recognizes that they must have two sets of criteria. And this, it really has nothing to do with this, except that I wanted you to know. There is a sanitary code that they are really stringent on for new builds. Because you've got a blank piece of paper and you can start from scratch. So there's no reason to build in detrimental designs into a new system. On repairs, they relax those because they understand that they would be kicking people out of their home if they couldn't come up with the best system they possibly could. Usually it's either environmental or room. And so that's where I come in, and I probably design 70–75% of all the engineered systems in Oakland County. And so I try my hardest to solve an environmental issue, but make it work.
I've got a couple of questions.
Mr. Brayfield?
You guys know, and the whole point of coming tonight is, you know the 100-foot.
Correct.
You're aware of that, and you know that we can go to 50 feet with special conditions.
Yes.
And you are asking us to go beyond that 50 feet.
Yes.
Just for the paperwork and record, you do know you're asking this board to go beyond that, closer than 50 feet.
Yes, sir.
Have you looked around for any way you can minimize the size of the field or whatever to make it the location where we're looking for that would fit within the 50 feet?
I did, and I came up, when I sit down with a project, I always try to meet all the rules, both at the health department and the local community. With my municipal hat on, I'm looking to other engineers to do that same thing. And so when I review their plans, I'm held to that same responsibility. In this particular case, the health department has a 50-foot requirement as well. All septic systems need to be 50 feet from either a wetland or a lake shore. They've approved this at 23 feet. We tried very hard to change it. The difference is, of course, we only have 60 feet across the entire piece of property. Virtually impossible to make it happen. I designed a site in Commerce Township, a matter of taste, right on the lake, and I had to go to the ZBA. You can well imagine they wanted to put a restaurant right on the lake. It did have sanitary sewers, but I tell this as a metaphor. The ZBA asked me the same question. Could you design a building on that site? I said, absolutely. It'd be a photomat, little photomat store. But otherwise, we need your variances in order to even make it work.
Okay. And I've got another question. I think you got in on this thing after the property was purchased and everything like that, correct?
That is correct.
I guess my question would be to Attorney Libelo and to the owners. Were you, when you bought the property, were you aware of the 150-foot setbacks? Were you aware of it when you purchased the property? They had to.
We were not aware.
Did the attorney show you the ordinances that on ordinance 13.3 you could not put a septic system closer than 50 feet?
I didn't represent the Koalas when they bought the property.
Did you show them that?
No, they knew that the septic system was there for 50 or 60 years, and they bought a system that existed. So somebody approved it that long time ago, and then it failed, and they wanted to get it fixed. So I sent them to Mike Powell.
So basically, they weren't aware of the 13.3 where you could not go closer to 50 feet. Is that correct?
We were not even aware when the hearing on condemnation of the house took place. The supervisor nor the ordinance officer told us about this rule. They told us repeatedly, and I got the minutes here, that go to Oakland County and get a permit to put a new septic tank system, and they will cooperate with us as much as they can to put a new system there. And that Oakland Health County, Department of Oakland Health, the county department
We're aware
has
of that.
supersedes.
We're aware of that, but that was
Supersedes.
after you bought the property. You didn't do that before you bought the property, did you?
Correct.
You bought it, you did all that after you owned the property.
They didn't do anything about the septic system until they were told that it was failing.
Okay.
Okay, just to say it clearly, what you have proposed here to us tonight is in fact what Oakland County has permitted with the deed restrictions and everything else we've talked about.
Everything that I've shared with you is part of the approval of the permit.
Okay,
That is
good.
correct.
Thank you.
Council, didn't Oakland County reject, and you had to go to court to overrule Oakland County, right?
Ike, you can explain that. We
Yeah,
did.
I don't think I would phrase it quite that way.
Help me out there.
The county has a sanitary code, and they have requirements that have to be met for that. When the administration of the sanitary health department can't meet that requirement, they're bound because they don't have the administrative ability to approve sites like that. So there's a next step called the Sanitary Code of Appeals Board. And it's my job to take a design to them and essentially present my case to them. They have the ability to overrule the administration and require them to issue the permit. In that particular case, there were some issues that they felt we could do a little bit better job. And you could probably see, and with my political hat on, you can probably see that some people don't necessarily like to make a decision that might be challenged. And so the Sanitary Code of Appeals Board, not unanimously, I don't believe, but denied to issue the permit itself.
Right, that's what I was, and then you went to court, and
Went to the circuit
the judge
court.
said, let's do it.
No, that's not how it went. The circuit court then said, go back, sit down,
Yeah.
bring me the best system you possibly can. We went in together, and the court said, okay, because we designed the best system we
Yeah, and
could.
then you put it in a nice consent judgment, reads well.
Correct.
And just so the board is aware, all of the things that they're describing run with the land. So all of the things that he's told you run with the land, not just, so the conditions will always be true.
Yes, thank you for that.
Yeah.
And the deed restrictions run with the land, obviously.
Right, yeah, and so they all run with the land. Everything that he described, having the contractor, all of the requirements that are in the consent judgment, it's a recorded consent judgment that runs with the land, so it'll be bound all the time. When we're all gone, when you'll probably be around.
I hope not.
When we're all gone, it'll still be running with the land as the same conditions will be in effect. The
Whoever
same-
owns the house will have to comply with it.
Yeah, whoever, so if they sold a house or whatever, then somebody else has to comply. Same reporting requirements back to the county, same data system, same everything continues to apply. It doesn't get modified. The new people have to get their contractor to do the same things he described.
If I could add just one additional thing, because one of you gentlemen, I forget who it was very astute in stating...
That was the chairman.
That was the chairman, obviously.
First time for everything.
There was a question about, did they know about this? Did they know about the septic field and the condition of the zoning ordinance when they bought? There was nothing to inform them. You wouldn't believe how many people come from the city and they come out and you tell them there's a septic field, they go, what's a septic field? And those of us that have lived on a septic field know that. In this particular case, These are recorded documents, and anybody that buys this home has no excuse anymore because it is right in your face.
Yeah, and go back to your one question about the licensing and the insurance. Anyone in Michigan who deals with septic is licensed and insured. I represent the Septic Association, and they're very, very vigilant with regulations on their septic haulers. So
I'm
whoever
more-
touches that
Yeah.
stuff.
I'm more concerned about the lake, getting from mainland to lake
Yeah.
and making sure that they're licensed, insured, bonded, whatever it is, so that if they screw up on the way to the island, you know, who's gonna fix it?
Their machines are so costly.
Well-
Mr. David, but they will not take chances. We spent 32,000 on building the barge for them. So it's a
I
very
understand what you're saying.
top of the line
I'm
barge.
talking about when the thing is cleaned out, it has to be,
Maintenance.
it has to
We
make.
have barge too,
Yeah.
small barge.
And
Not the
when,
big one.
after they failed the septic tank, we spent 3,500 for company to come and pump out the sewage from the old system.
Into the-
We are not negligent people. We do
I'm not
everything
accusing you of
properly.
that. I'm speaking about the contractors that are required to maintain the system, to install the system, things of that. This is an unusual circumstance. It's not like you're coming from, you know, you're going to an island, you're crossing water. It's always a delicate balance there.
The advantage of the maintenance issue is that you're dealing with a very finite amount of water that can be actually transferred in a normal boat, in a drum, in a normal boat. You don't have to buy special equipment to be able to haul it back, because you have electricity out on the site, so your electric pumps can fill the tank. You can have that in a boat, and then you can have it lifted out of the boat once you get to shore. It's not nearly like a barge, so it's much
So the
simpler.
volume would fit in a tote, like a regular tote.
It doesn't, when you say
Like a
it.
chemical tote, those big.
Yes, yeah, correct. Even if it was a couple loads.
Okay, correct.
I'm going to ask my final question here.
You said that before.
Truly, final.
I'm glad I'm not the chairman of mine, so.
You said you met with the health department and came up with this plan. When was this plan dated?
It's been a while now.
Because I can't see the little print here.
2018.
Hard to see.
January 8th, 2017 is the plan that we finally ended up with. So it was the year before that, 2016, is probably, I'm going to say it was a 6-month process to be able to come up with this plan.
Okay, so I guess I lied about my final question. Follow-up question.
Yes.
I don't remember, Mr. Davis may have a copy of the consent judgment. It was just before the consent judgment was entered, we had the final plan.
Hang on a second.
So,
The consent judgment is 7/27/18.
yeah, so just a month before then.
So it's 18, not 16.
2018.
Yes, I'm sorry, I quoted the wrong
Everything
date.
was in
So I guess my follow-up question would be, you said this is the state-of-the-art system.
Yeah.
As of this plan that you're talking about and presenting up there, have things improved in the last 4 or 5 years? Or is there a better system that could be installed?
And as I shared with you, I design these every day and deal with the health department. Quite frankly, no, there is nothing better than this on the market.
Phil, do you have any questions?
Yes, I have a question. The people that maintain this system,
Yes, sir.
are they specialized in this?
They're not only licensed through the county, but they have to be certified by the manufacturer of the equipment. So they go to school down at the manufacturing plant to know exactly how to maintain it and what issues to look for while they're inspecting it.
So they do have a education on this system?
Yes, sir.
Jake, any questions?
Yeah, one question. If this was designed in 2017 and the consent judgment was in 2018, and why is it waited till 2022 for us to be having this discussion? Why wasn't this system installed in 2018 or 19?
The word that all of us hate to hear, COVID. Contractors couldn't do their work. The state was shut down. Suppliers were shut down. And again, I shared with you how hard it was to even get one plant for this to even have it installed, and that was last fall. We could not get the material or the parts to install it.
Any more questions? No. Mr. Smith, you've been awful quiet. Do you have any questions?
Oh, I'm satisfied. Good presentation.
Yeah,
Mr. Spina?
yeah, very good presentation, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. Just to make sure, just for the integrity of this board, that is the smallest unit that you could put in that would do the job, correct?
What a great question. I have the ability to pick and choose from about a half dozen different treatment plants. Each one have their idiosyncrasies, and the question is an extremely good one because I could, in fact, have designed a smaller plant in here. I'm going to spin it around just so that we can make sure we know what we're talking about. The treatment plant that I've designed here includes both of these tanks right here. I could have designed a smaller tank. I could have then reduced the minimum dimensions that I've asked for the variance, and we've asked for the variance. Problem is, it would not clean the wastewater as clean as this one. And so the smaller the unit is limited by its space and the treatment ability of that smaller plant. And it's really a moot point in that even though we're closer here than we are at the septic field is where the water comes out of. So even if I shrunk this down, let's say I shrank that all the way down to where I had 23 feet or 25 feet to the water, I would be giving up the quality of the treatment if I did that. So I opted, and quite frankly, the health department opted, as well as the court, to go for the quality of the effluent, cleaning of the effluent, instead of the distance to the arbitrary distance to the water's edge. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, it does, and I've got a couple more. On that unit, it has, obviously, you said it has the air vent, which has to feed the air to make it work.
Correct.
In the Michigan snows, that would get deeper than the air vent, and it would obviously plug the air vent. Give us what is the condition that would stay open?
Yes, and I love snow, and this past year was a major disappointment. We didn't get enough, but your question's a good one, because if in fact that air intake is plugged, we defeat our oxygen going into the plant. However, the wastewater coming from the home is at 55, 60 degrees. So the energy used in this plant, the water is above freezing, and so much like a catch basin cover melts the snow that's on top of it, it does the same thing. And you've probably seen the snow melt on your septic field before anyplace else. So same thing, we have direct air coming from this system, and therefore the heat of that will keep that air intake open. I did want to point out, and this is really critical, and the owners have to know this because I spend a little less time in Michigan than I used to, and if they leave for a period of time, a long period of time in the winter time, it's very critical that they contact the contractor. Has to come out and make sure they winterize this system, because if they leave for 3 months and this sits unwinterized through the winter, it will freeze up and it'll break the inside of that unit. So they drain the water down, they pull the pump, they set it in a garage, and then when the homeowners come back, it's reinstalled. And that is across the board on every pre-treatment system out there. Snowbirds have to be aware that they have to winterize it if they're going to be leaving for any lengthy period of time in the wintertime.
If they don't do that and it fails, will the alarm go off?
If they don't notify the contractor will probably notice it when he goes out there, but the alarm will absolutely go off, and the automatic sending unit will show that the system, the engine has stopped, and that prompts that direct call to the contractor.
One final question. This is my last question.
Okay.
Now, you mentioned the the drain tank on the other side, the long one.
The septic field?
The field is 4
Yeah.
feet above the ground level. What about
I
freezing?
don't believe I said that.
4 feet high,
It's 4 feet above the groundwater.
groundwater.
So it's an additional 2 feet above that.
Okay, what keeps that from freezing?
Quite frankly, nothing, except that the system is self-draining. So as it squirts the water out, it's going down, and so the pipes are left a void.
Okay, but is it above the freeze line?
Well, yeah, remember the freeze line in Michigan is 42 inches?
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. If
So
it's above
every-
the freeze line,
every-
it's going to freeze right up.
Matter of fact, systems don't freeze if you're utilizing it because it generates heat. But there's actually a law, a part of the new sanitary code, that a septic system cannot be deeper than 24 inches. The biological activity in a septic field needs air. And so if you bury those things deep, it doesn't get the air necessary, and that septic system is going to fail much sooner than it should.
That's my final question, and I'm holding to it.
Any other questions? Any other comments from the applicant?
Thank you. Won't spend much time on that because obviously this is a great technical presentation and very impressed with the questions that came out. What we have here is an interesting situation where there is obviously practical difficulty that's not self-made. And that's really the standard. And there's the additional wrinkle that under the ordinance, under the health and sanitation section of the ordinance, the regulations of the Oakland County Health Department are supposed to be the ones that are relied on and used by the building official. And we think that obviously indicates that what the health department says in the county is really what's important, and that's what should go here, and that's what should be of a large influence to you. Also, I think it's important to remember that if this property can't have a septic system, then essentially it's being condemned. And I don't think that's something that anybody really wants to see. So when you consider the fact that they have an excellent design here, a design that really is state-of-the-art, and when the ordinances were put in place, just like when all the septic systems were installed around the lake, things were different, the technology was different. So this is really a great opportunity to have kind of a showcase septic system that probably will be emulated as the other systems fail around the lake. Also, I know there's some concerns about getting back and forth from the island to do the installations, and we talked about going to Salvation Army as agreed. Barge could leave from there, small barge. You could always make that a condition of approval, of course, and I think that would be a good idea. Lastly, I want to say the questions were so good, and the answers were supplied tonight. It's going to be fresh in your mind. Maybe it would be a good idea, if you're comfortable with it, to vote on this tonight rather than come back another time. Okay. Perfect.
Yes.
Thanks.
Just remind the board that we used similar technology in Copper Hills. You may remember that. Remember when we didn't want to get rid of a lot of trees? Trees are not friendly to septic. Right. So we used a system, a modified system such as this for the homes, some of the homes at Copper Hills, because we didn't want the trees to go away, but we wanted septic, right? I think you remember that. So
I watched it go in.
yeah, and so we used a modified system there of similar nature so that we could preserve the trees and still have manageable septic.
Just one more point I wanted to add. You know, if the house is condemned and there's no septic field there, we will not go there. There will be greater contamination from E. coli coming from all the birds. There are lots of geese and ducks which they poop all over the place and then gets washed into the lake. So E. coli count will be higher. Right now what we do is we take fox urine and spray it all around. We clean it. We don't push the waste from the birds right into the lake, but we scoop it up and we dispose it properly. So by putting the septic tank, the E. coli count of the lake will be much less than if we just ignore it of birds defecate all over the place. And also the question of vandalism, right now, since we hardly go there, we can't even step there. Kids come, they drink beer, break beer bottle all over the place. They're more likely to contaminate, excrete there if somebody is not living there. So from lakes, sanitary point of view, and for aesthetic appeal of the island, it is better the septic tank is approved and somebody takes care of it. And we promise we'll make that island very beautiful. My wife has all kinds of ideas how to make it into the most attractive piece of property in Addison Township and on Lakeville Lake. So people will come, look at it and admire. So all of us will benefit if we go along with the request that the new septic system is installed.
With that system, you put in copper rails. Is there
One final
been any
question.
repercussions?
Does board members
over-
have any more questions?
It's been okay. They were just single.
No questions of the board? Does the applicant, are they finished with their presentation? Is the applicant finished with their presentation?
Yeah, we are, thank you.
Okay, great. Unfortunately, you were asking for us to make a decision tonight, and it's our policy as in Addison Township ZBA that we make a decision at the following meeting, which will be in June, this second Thursday in June, so I don't know what that date is.
The only reason why we want it is because the Salvation Army then gets very busy. If
Right,
it
well, I
comes to this
understand.
month, they're not very busy, and it'll be easier for us to transport everything if we start the work immediately.
Permit won't expire also.
Nonetheless, it's our policy that we don't make a decision tonight at the public hearing. So it'll have to take to the next meeting to do that. Okay. So at this point, I'm closing the public hearing portion of this.
I think your public hearing's already closed.
Yeah, well, this case for the night, unless there's any other questions or anything, and we'll move on to the next agenda item. Okay, it is now 7:25. Okay, our next case is case number 22-5. The applicant is Cameron and Kristen Kennedy. Present? The applicant's parcel address is 267 Baywood. Combined parcel ID is 05.22.402.035. The zoning is residential R1. The applicant's parcel ID is 05.22, I'm not sure if this is the old parcel number. 05.22.402.016 and 017. The applicant seeks a variance from the Township of Addison Code of Ordinances, Appendix A, Code of Ordinances, Article 8, Section 8.05.3, maximum ground floor coverage, and Section 8.05.04, minimum yard setbacks. The applicant is requesting the following variances. 1, a 1,602 square foot variance, 35.8%, maximum ground floor lot coverage, Section 8.053. 2, a 26-foot and 5-inch rear yard setback variance from Section 8.05.4, the deck. The third one is a 9-foot and 9-inch variance side yard setback variance from Section 8.05.4 for the kitchen. That's the outdoor kitchen, I'm assuming. 4, a 7-foot 9-inch side yard setback variance from Section 8.05.4 for the swim spa. Section 8.05 area density, height, and yard regulations. 8.05.3 maximum ground floor lot coverage 15%. 8.05.4 minimum yard setbacks, front is 50 feet, side at least 15 feet, side total 230 feet, rear 30 feet. Okay, so that's the application. We've had our public hearing last month. That public hearing is now closed. There won't be any more public comment on this matter. Does the applicant have any more comments to make to the board or thoughts they want to share with us?
May I speak? My name's Nicole Collins, and I'm with Two Steps West. I work for the Kennedys on this job. And I just wanted to clarify too, the amount of square footage that we are, the percentage is 26.9, actually above the existing. The existing is 1417, which is 23.9% coverage, and that's what will remain. So above and beyond what we're asking for is 26.9 would be the new. The total is the 38%. We had to ask for the variance on what is existing because it's going to remain. Just so you know, we're not adding another 38% to it.
Any other comments or thoughts by the applicant? No, I think we're good.
Is there just a contact to reach the board directly, or do we still have to go through the city if we have any existing questions? Or we just weren't able to ever?
Well, I think tonight's a night for a decision, so.
Yeah, we're going to decide on your variance request, but if there's other things that come up, you got to go talk to the building department.
All right.
You don't come see us.
Right.
Unless you make another application.
Right, so you gentlemen, the public hearing is closed. You've heard the applicant's presentation. I take it, I've read the minutes, very well done. I'm sorry I couldn't be here. Well, not real sorry. But I am sorry I wasn't here, but I think tonight's, if you've done your work, tonight would be the night to make a decision on this matter.
I didn't know if the board had any other questions of the applicant, or...
I don't.
If not, we need a motion to approve or deny the application.
I've looked at the application. It looks like the only thing that would be a concern would be the deck, which is above the ground, which would be within the requirements. I would like to make a motion that we approve the request. All four. 1, 2, 3, and 4.
And that would be based on the testimony that you've heard in the applicant's presentation?
Yes, for the record.
And would also be based on the public comments, if any, that were heard?
That was, yes, as of last month and this week.
Any other, there's a motion.
We have support.
Is there a second?
I'll support the motion.
Okay, any discussion on the motion?
Anybody who has another reason why they want to add to the record to support the motion can add it now as a friendly amendment.
Well, okay, the only thing I would add is that the lot coverage that you've specified percentages for includes the swim spa.
Yes, sir.
And I would argue that that's not hard cover. I mean, this coverage has to do with getting rid of rain and snow.
I believe your ordinance specifically states that it has to be included in lot coverage.
And I'm sure that's correct, but in my opinion, it should.
What you're saying is it doesn't create runoff.
It doesn't create runoff, it just, the water goes in and stays.
I agree.
I think what you're asking for, well, technically, right, is really not quite, it's not huge, but it's a little better than what you're asking for.
And that's another reason that you support the motion?
Yes, that you have stated things accurately, but it's not that bad.
Then tell about the wooden deck.
Also, thank you, I forgot about that. Your replacement of this this cobblestone patio, which would allow absolutely zero water through it to the ground, is going to be replaced by a wooden deck, a composite wooden deck, according to the plans.
Yes.
Now, that's different than a 1x6 cedar with gaps between all the boards, but even so, it seems like that deck would let more water pass through it than the masonry patio that you have now. So again, even though looking from the bird's eye view, it's larger in square footage, it's not, the permeability is not 100% or 0% as it is right now. It would be higher than that. I don't know the number, but it would be higher than that.
So those are two reasons you would add as a friendly amendment in support of the motion?
Yes.
And then, Mr. Brakefield, would you accept those?
Yes, I would.
And would the second still stand?
Yes.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we need a roll call vote on the motion. A yes vote is for approval of the variance.
Variance is?
Yes means yes.
Variance is correct.
Tony Spina,
Yes.
Ed Brightfield.
Yes?
Jay Sandler,
Yes.
Vice Chair Smith.
Yep.
Chair DeWitt.
Yes.
So do we adjourn now to the pool spa, or?
Wait, I need to make an
Thank you very
amendment.
much.
He's got to invite us to the spa when it's in.
It sounds like a small resort, right? Very cool.
Have to test it, make sure it works.
Granted, you're free to go.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your patience tonight.
Yeah, maybe we should have done yours first.
That's okay, we got educated.
Okay. This would be, the next item on the agenda is public forum. If anybody in the audience wants to address the board, feel free.
Release it.
And there's nobody here, so I don't think there's going to be anybody making comments. So,
You better close it then.
yes. The next item is other business, correspondence received by the board. No correspondence. Move on to B, zoning board reports. Any reports?
Lawrence?
I'm planning, not zoning.
Okay. Next would be the planning commission liaison. Do you have a report to make?
Planning commission has nothing pending right now.
Well, the final would be a motion for adjournment.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Support?
Aye.
Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. Voice.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None?